これは水ですか？ Vodka です。そうですか？ Scene. Okay. Um, so that was those were some words that I learned from my Duolingo today. これは水ですか? And you can let me know, girl. Is this water? And I latched onto that because I'm very interested in learning like cunt Japanese phrases. What have I not been? Well, but specifically, so I have this goal of by the time I'm 30, well, I've had an amorphous goal of by the time I'm 30, becoming more masterful in a few different languages, and now I feel like I have a scale, because there's that, and I'm sure you know about this, the like scale of fluency, where it's like, I think it's like B1, B2, something, 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 or like where like B1 is being able to give directions, and like A2 or something is like um, basically fluent, and like C1 is like super basic kind of thing. Anyways, so I'm like, okay, I want to get to B1. I want to get to giving directions, not necessarily holding like super intellectual conversations, but I want to get to like being able to give directions to people in the few languages that I've selected to do. And I've been kind of incorporating language practice into my daily work stuff. Um, so I do the Pomodoro method where it's like 50 minutes working, 10 minutes break, 50 minutes working, 10 minutes break. In my 10 minutes break, I usually spend like, if I'm at work, I'll hit Pokemon Go. But normally I'll just like, you know, practice do a little Duolingo. And, it's just been working because I get well above on normal weeks, I should say, I get well above the like standard, um, like daily, the most you can assign daily, I guess, to do on that app. So that's fun. And like I looked at Duolingo for different languages, and obviously it varies, but it looks like it can get you up to the uh, language that you want, up to one of those levels. I think for Japanese it is that maybe B1. Obviously, there's a level of like separate practice, and specifically, for the languages I'm picking, I really want to focus on ones that I have people who I can speak to, and uh, you know, relate to places that I would like to visit, and that also have like resources beyond just language practice though. So like media that I want to consume, I could consume. So like for Japanese, I've been really digging back into Terrace House. They have a new season coming up. I'm super excited about that. Uh, and like non-anime Japanese, because I know anime Japanese can be um, unrealistic. But I still watch that. I still watch that. If I can understand that better, I'll take it. And then like Netflix is really where it's at because Netflix has the subtitles for whatever language. So if I'm watching like a Spanish language show, I can watch it with the Spanish subtitles, and it can help me. So um, right now I'm trying it on a monthly thing. Like this month has been Japan, and I made it through like the first and maybe like a half of the second sections of Japanese. I know you should probably just like power through all one, but I ain't got time like that. Or I guess maybe at one point I will just focus, especially as we get closer to Japan trip. I was really happy to hear you say to speak about Japan trip. I know there's still a lot of things that have to come, and my next summer is looking so packed, so fucking packed right now. That I'm just like, ooh, I hope everything can fit. Ooh, shit. Because we're planning for my Nat Geo trip to be next summer. I'm graduating and allegedly defending, although I might end up defending in December. I don't know. We'll see. Um, because the fellowship I'm applying to, you do not hear back from it until like June. Actually, I haven't heard if Mackenzie got it or not right now. I keep thinking she's not gonna get it. It's gonna be bad. But anyway, so she pushed her. graduation back to December, just so that she can like get everything out that she needs to get out and do this other stuff. And then yeah, so next summer is going to be really back. But anyway, all that to say, right, I'm probably going to focus more on Japanese when I get even closer. But like I don't have like a class or anything. Or I remember when we were doing Chinese, I got to do like fun skits and stuff. So I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just like as I get a bit more competent, create little skits, and I can have um, I can perform them for you, and then you can grade me on my. I've also found specifically with Japanese. So wait, the other languages I want to learn: Japanese, Spanish, French, and Chinese. And those are the other four. Like, 'cause I feel like five languages are like, oh yeah, bitch, I can give directions to five languages. Like that's pretty. That's good. I like that. And then from there I can expand. Especially because there are a lot of Chinese people in my field. Being at an international conference. Yes, there are a lot of Chinese people. I also recognize that anti-blackness is global, and me being queer and black might restrict me from collaborating with a lot of these Chinese people. But if I can speak Chinese, that might give me a slight, uh, a bit of a head on these white people who just have, white privilege to fall back on. Anyways, yeah. So for I find with Japanese, I really want to speak in like a soft, samurai voice, very masked. uh, and although I feel like most people who I hear who are native English speakers who speak Japanese, they tend to go like softer and higher, they're like, oh, yes, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, so this guy. Mm-hmm. Anyways, all that to say, I'm having fun with that. And like being here specifically has made me really want to um, ex- like it's reinvigorated my language of learning desires. Specifically, like my trip to Brussels, which I'll tell you about, was so that's where I was. I was in Belgium. I was in Belgium for this conference last week, and that's the conference where I was gonna die because the anxiety was too much. But it ended up being a good conference, and like specifically after the conference, and so this is a good reversal here. But after the conference, I was in Brussels with Shelly, and we were like just kind of hanging out, chilling, blah blah blah, and um, we were in a very like I think Brussels is at least the half of Brussels that I was in mostly French. Like I'm sure there's like Dutch. It's supposed to be Dutch French, but like the half that I was on was French as fuck. And what really like floored me was that most of the black people, right, spoke French and like no like French and like Portuguese maybe, but then that's it. Like and it made me realize that they are like African, like French African people who, and it was just so weird not being able to, because they looked at me, I felt them feeling like they could communicate to me, but then they couldn't, and I couldn't directly communicate to them, other than like, the basic English phrases, the yes, no, pointing, things like that. So that felt like, oh no, I can't. Now I want to learn this damn language so I can uh, maybe it felt kind of like your experience in, um, or what you described your experience in Paris, where there was just like this section of like black French people, and it just made it seem a lot cooler. Like once it was like mostly black people speaking French, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I really want to learn this language. Let me get into it. It also sounds nice. That's the thing about Dutch. Does not sound good. I do not like, as much. And my PI here, Eric, he very much so like he's into learning Dutch, and the way he describes it, and everyone else, honestly, he speaks Dutch like a taxi cab driver speaks Dutch or speaks English kind of thing. And I was like, okay, just to the point where his accent is not very pleasing to Dutch, and I think part of it is just like a lot of the sounds you don't get super well, like our native English speakers don't do very well, like G, like um, like the word for day is dag or wageningen or you know, it's just like it. You know, it's not a comfortable thing for a native English speaker. So uh, and there's not really a whole lot of media that I'm scrambling to watch. You know, even watching like in my new place. This new place is interesting. So I'm not sure if I've shown you this, but it's like I'm downtown, downtown where the folks are broke. We're going down. You can't even see out that window. It's like right. That's like the main street. Is my window open? No, my window's closed. Because I can like, if one of my windows open, I can hear all the way down, like because it's like a sound funnel basically. Anyone walking underneath my thing, I hear all their conversations. It's very much so like like when we were standing outside the window of that guy who in Simpson just chatting up. It was like I don't know 1, 2 in the morning, and he was like, "I got a test tomorrow." It's very that tea. So woo! Rest in peace, Simpson. Rest in peace, Simpson. Look, I'm all over the place. Um, But where was I going at? I know I mentioned Fem Japanese versus Math Japanese and language stuff. Oh yeah, my trip. So yeah, this last week. So I kind of relayed this to you. My presentation went well. Actually, a lot of people thought it was very clear. I'm a good communicator, turns out. And it was very clear, understandable. It was different from a lot of the things that were going on at the conference. My data set was legit, which they are. All data sets in my that's like the strength of my PhD, and I looked at these data sets. These aren't like I did not create these data sets, so that's powerful. And in my presentation, I think is good, and I got feedback from Eric that was um, that I really liked, I guess I should say, because other people said it was good, but I felt obviously in my heart of hearts that it could have been a lot better, and which is a good feeling to have people think that is good, and that I realize that's not the extent of me. You have not seen my true power. This is not my final form. Uh, and uh, and then Eric, meeting with me and going like, yeah, you could have this, that, this, that, this, that, this. I think if you had focused more on this, you could, and blah blah blah. And so, and then later he came back. I guess something you talked to some other people that really um, spoken highly of my presentation or something. And he was like, yeah, I focused too much on what what I felt you needed to improve on. But other than that, I think you did very well as far as your figures are very clear, well, easily understood, and it's a really fun question, and I think one that could potentially set up my career. So I'm in this very weird place of not having any papers right now, and I have this paper due literally next week, which is why I am why this weekend will be very busy for me. I'm going to be working on getting this paper out, and I'm trying not to be too gloom and doom about it. I'm actually really trying to just like find my flow as far as writing. I started with making a bunch of these flashcards. I found I do better physically writing and then typing and then doing my editing on computer. So I physically wrote out these flashcards, and then I like have this book, and so then I go for each flashcard, which should be like as a topic, right? And then I go through and I just write on. So this is me. So like this is, yeah. So like this was one flashcard basically, and when I say a lot of things in this kind of because and this is a discussion on the paper, and then I'm planning to type it up, add, subtract, do a little bit more in that, and then add all my citations where they need to be added, and then rejigger and set it off for my first draft. And I think that's going to be a really good way of doing this, a good way of approaching it for me. Yeah. So, but the presentation went well, and then the rest of the content was okay. My computer has been stressing me out. My keyboard has stopped working properly. Apparently this is the thing with Macs is that after a time, the whatever connector to the keyboard to the rest of the Mac, it's jostled and loose, and then just doesn't want to connect anymore. You have to like shake it. With shaking your computer is like a bad thing to do in order to do that. So I had to get this like wireless thing. Luckily, like I shook it and then it's stable now on my desk, so I don't want to like go into work and then unjostle it. But I had to order this keyboard because I'm eventually going to have to travel with my laptop, and so now I have this wireless. Now I have this wireless keyboard, and so that should work. Yeah, I'm also like gotten these headsets because this new apartment is like a prison, really. It is basically it's so echoey, and if someone, especially people who don't live here, come through, like the cleaning people or the guy who like introduces people to the space, they're very loud. They slam a lot of doors, and it's basically like being in a war zone. It is so anxiety ridden. So I got these so that I would not have to hear anything, any of the slamming, any of the blah blah blah. It's quiet now because it's literally the middle of the day. I'm working from home. And yeah, it was just it was way too much. It was just anxiety invoking, and I didn't even know it until like Eric really pointed it out because I told him how bad it was, but I did not connect it to like it increasing my level of anxiety until Eric said so. Because when I was traveling, um, when I was traveling to the conference, I had relayed to him my anxiety attack that I had the week before, and he was like, "Hey, listen, I hear you. If there's anything you need me to do, if you need me to make a slide or something for you, let me know." And I was like, one, I would never have you do that. That would be way too much. Two, I really appreciate like the because I think, and this actually ties into a whole thing here um, about how I have how I have approached advisors and the scientific process and people in science and what that was um, painted by. And I think particularly my experience with Stuart, like you remember when Stuart yelled at me in lab and specifically me reacting to it uh, over some misunderstanding between uh, what he thought I was doing and what I was actually doing, and basically just completely yelled at me and made me like just think my entire career was over because this is like, oh, you're my letter of recommendation. You are my major letter of recommendation, and you just did this. My whole career is done, dusted, over. And I think any other person who hadn't had as much experience as I did doing research with other labs at that point, or anyone else who especially as a person of color, like that is it. They just leave. They just don't do science anymore because that is done. And like, um, but it really taught me a lesson of like, oh, PIs are not here for your emotions. They do not care about you being a human being. They do not care that you're going through whatever. They do not. They're not interested in your sob story. They're not interested in your emotions because even after he like fake apologize, not even fake, false apologize. Like, oh, I'm sorry you feel bad about what happened, instead of real apology. So, it was just layered on layer on layer on shit. So, and not that Chris has been bad, but he hadn't done anything to make me unthink that. And but Eric has been very like emotionally present and aware of not just me but of other people, and that's what let me feel like it was okay for me to speak on that with him. Um, yeah, and that was so refreshing. And this plays into the full arc. So like after my thing, so the people hung out with most at the conference were actually people at UF. So Emily Sessa, who started as a professor there, um, she's like the Queen of Ferns, who has this thing in Africa. By the way, like she messaged me, I messaged her, and then like Dust And I was like, oh fuck, that's it. I overestimated the strength of our friendship. uh, but then apparently she had just gone on her trip to Africa. It doesn't look like what happened to the Lombardis is going to affect her program because they that happened in Johannesburg, and she's like her students will be in the city for okay. Her students will be in the city for all of less than a few days before they are literally in like the bush through South Africa and Botswana in like cheetah preserves and this place and that place. So it's all very naturey. They're not around a whole lot of people who would be able to lend them. They're more likely to get mauled by some animal tea than I think the like cultural experience that the Lombardis have. So it doesn't seem like it will, but apparently a lot of people had messaged her that. I probably was just the first one. Uh, but yeah, so I hung out with her, Shelly, who was the one giving me anxiety, um, who I also roomed with, and hold and Clayton, who is he was a graduate student at UF when I was an undergrad, and we took a class together that Emily taught. So it was like this fun little thing. Now he's a professor in California at Sac State, and he's like writing grants with Emily and stuff. And he was a Soltis grad student. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna go use the bathroom, and I don't think I can pause this. I think I can just stop it. So I'm just gonna you're just gonna have to skip. You're just gonna skip. Hold on. Okay. So back. Uh, what was I saying? Yeah, so I was hanging out with those three really for most of the conference. Because you go to the international conference and you're definitely trying to meet people, and I definitely did meet people. I met some people at Vachinen that I did not know before, and while I was there, I clashed a lot of queers. There was no kind of coalition, but they were milling about. There were a few black people, most of them African, and then hmm, yeah, and then the Sultai, who I hung out with, and I enjoyed being around. They're super great. I think they like me in general because I came to their lab and because um, I seem to be like doing the thing, and part of what I've realized is like if I do the bare minimum, I will definitely get a job, and I will definitely I'll be invited to talks, and because one, I'm a good speaker, and two, um, I'm a Negro, and and there aren't a whole lot of us. There aren't a whole lot of us in evolutionary biology. There aren't. There aren't. There are not. Um, I think I also have something to offer, intellectually. Um, Even if I'm moving slower than I really than some of the girls. Okay, some of these girls are crazy out here, and but I feel like I'm finally getting to a place where I'm developing the skills that I really, you know, could have used some help in developing, but had to build on my own. But now they're here, and now I can. Now it's only up to me to push it through and to deal with whatever anxieties I have to deal with, or deal with whatever blah 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 is standing in my way, and develop like a good healthy routine to really get what I want done because the ideas are there. We've had this conversation. Um, yeah, and then so traveling through Brussels and Ghent. So the actual conference was at Ghent, which was much less French. There was like no French speakers basically in Ghent, and it was the college town. And there are a lot of castles and which was very interesting as a Ren person, and beer and waffles and good bakeries. Wow, really nice like bakeries throughout Brussels and in Ghent were like every morning breakfast was like a pastry of like ooh, a very delicious croissant or something. Um, so that was nice. I think the most cathartic thing though for me from that conference experience um, was the uh, so there's a moment during our conference dinner, and I was sitting next to Emily and Clayton, Clayton's grad student Chris, who had just gone through a whole lot of shit during the conference with his wife's mother basically getting diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer the day before he left, and all the crazy shit that's associated with, and um, yeah, and then we were talking about ways of teaching and advising, and like they brought up Stuart McDaniel, who I mentioned earlier, who like whatever, and she knew I was in his lab, and apparently none of his grad students, like he has not graduated a single grad student yet. I think Sarah, who was an undergrad in the lab with me, will be the first. And his overall mentor style is like really horrible, and people are always coming to Emily. His grad students go to Emily because of how like horribly horrible and shit it is, and that he learned a lot of his shitty advising experience from his advisor, something Shaw, I forget, also a Moss person, and at Duke. And yeah, and so then I told them about my experience, particularly about my experience taking classes with him, and then about him yelling at me, and then like the microaggressions that I received in the lab. And they were like, and he is on their like diversity. He is their head of diversity committee. Like that is a lot. And Emily is just going up for tenure. Like all her tenure stuff was submitted, and it looks like she'll get it. I'm pretty sure she'll get tenure. And she's like one of those kick butt, like young academics. I'm here to change some shit. We're not taking any more of your bullshit. We're gonna make a healthy, safe, productive science community here. It's gonna be great. She's definitely like she's definitely going to be president of a bunch of societies, and eventually they're just going to have to make her in the National Academy. I really hope so. I don't think there's been a Fern person in the National Academy yet, but I really hope that she gets there because she's just like super great. Yeah, so all that, and so I tell her all that, and she really heard me. Like she really heard me in that moment, and that felt really good. Because I think I'd been holding a grudge against him for hurting me in that way for a long time. And before this, I really wanted to like let it go. I was like, specifically at Plain Genome in San Diego earlier this year, I there was a situation where Stuart had come up to me and be like, "Hey, I see you. You're doing great. Congratulations, blah blah blah." And I was just kind of like, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, you can come to my talk. No, okay, well, thanks." And I'm standing in like a group of like three other people, and I must have given like an ugly look on my face because he kind of just like, "Okay, well, see ya." And, back away. Uh, and I didn't introduce him to anybody. I didn't like invite him into the space. I wasn't, I was triggered. And then afterwards, I told him that he was just a really horrible person to me. And so if I seemed off, that was why. And yeah, and I was like, I shouldn't really allow a person like that to have so much control over my emotions. I should really like try and work on letting that go for my sake, not for his, for my sake. Because I think when it had initially happened, I was like, oh, I'm going to work for the NSF and I'm going to deny all his grants and I'm going to blah blah blah. Like that's not going to hurt him. He has tenure. He's going to be fine. But yeah, and I'm talking to Emily, and she's really trying to make a lot of strong changes in their department overall. She, um, yeah, again, she just made me feel very heard. And even later on, she was like, "Hey, I definitely heard what you said. And if there's anything I'm gonna really try to like number one get not have him not on the diversity committee because that's ridiculous and we should not have a person like that on the diversity committee." And it felt like, oh, like that is like it was it was so cathartic. I wanted like I'm gonna message her at some point and just be like, hey, thanks for like if anything just hearing me on that because it's one of those things that like I feel like I tell people and then but nothing really happens. And now I feel like I told the person and who has a chance to do something. He's not gonna get fired over it. He's not gonna like, if they're not firing him over the way he treats his grad students, they're not gonna fire him over the way he treats some random undergrad Negro. And yeah, he will not be harmed overall that by it, but at least we can stop him from harming other people, and at least we can like reduce his impact on certain people, on grad students, on undergrads, on the diversity committee, whatever diversity recruitment they're trying to do. Um, yeah, yeah. So it felt really good, and that was probably like the biggest emotional takeaway, and it made me just like there were a lot of like big like this has been so emotional like of a time like just like oh my gosh dealing with all of this and I and it's crazy that I would not have dealt with any of this if I was still in Missouri, at least not in this way. uh, and that is wild. So yeah, so if you have any other specific questions about my time in Belgium, I've not gone to you asked me about the UK. I've not that is July, so that's next month, where I will be going to London. So I actually met a lot of people at this conference, and since I've been here, who I'm going to try and see. So London, I'm going to go to Kew Gardens, the biggest herbarium botanical garden in the world, like the greatest of the great. All the botanists go to Mecca, kind of thing. And so I'll spend a day there. I'm going to contact an herbarium curator, see if I can take a look at their collection. There was a old researcher, Jonathan Wendell, who works on cotton, and he's sabbaticaling there after a very long, productive career. He's taking a year sabbatical, just kind of like walking over to Kew and like living his good old life. And so I'm going to try and schmooze with him a bit, and then at and then I'm going to go to Cambridge to meet up with this grad student and Loki, his advisor. I don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to just email him and see if that's still a thing. But just to uh, pick their brains about some C4 photosynthesis stuff, so that can be cool for this for my Yale postdoc application. Yep, and then I'm gonna go to Manchester and I'm gonna meet up with Mackenzie and go to the SMB conference, and I still have to make a poster for that. It'll be fun. And although there's this very interesting, maybe I'll show you. I'll share the image of like ways of doing poster that was going on Twitter, where it was like you know sliver bar with like bullet pointed information, big colored box thesis of the paper. um, right? And we're like, yeah, and apparently a more engaging way to get poster design. And I'm very interested in playing around with like how we can make posters better and how we can consider um, poster design and things like that. And I'm super here for playing around. So I might experiment. I won't necessarily do that exactly. I don't want to get clocked for pulling something right off Twitter and slapping it for a poster, but I think I would really try and see what the tea is regarding some of that. Yeah, so I'll more when that happens. But that trip is tight because I'll do London and then I get back and I will already have been here for a day, and then and then we have that trip and then I'm leaving. So whew, if I breathe, if I get to breathe during that time, sis, uh, it's gonna be a lot. Um, yeah, so I did have a few things I wanted to mention, and then I have notes from your video that I want to get to, and I'm wondering what order I should do this in. I'll just finish with my stuff, and then I'll respond to your stuff because it is important. Uh, uh, okay. Um, no, mentioned all that. Oh well, I guess I really have like. So I think I've come up with a name for my. I think I'm going to use trees and black people for my Twitter handle for the podcast. Let me know what you think. So at trees and black people. And speaking of, can you um, upload your audios to the thing, to the drive, just in case I can play around with doing some back end editing myself on that. Um, Although it's not like I have time for it right now, but I have been like, oh, I want to play around with editing some of these things. So if you could like upload your stuff as well, that'd be great. And then yeah, and then I mentioned Shy's trip, and um, yeah, that's one of the things that's giving me a lot of anxiety right now. I'm feeling a lot of like, I saved up a good amount of money, and now it's like, ooh, oh, oh, well, am I just going to be back where I started right at the end? Um, and and obviously you decided you weren't going to be able to come because of financial issues. Um, and on one hand, I realize I don't have that option. I can't say Shy, I'm sorry, don't come because she's already bought her ticket. And honestly, I want to see Shy. I haven't seen Shy in forever. It would be just as easy for me to go and see Shy in Chicago, where um, she is housing, and I can stay for free basically. Whereas here, like staying in Washington would be cost prohibitive for anything that we'd want to do in uh, Amsterdam because it's like several cities away versus like being just on the outskirts of the city or anything like that. Yeah, and so I have to get this Airbnb closer and pay for that, and it's gonna be very expensive. And like you even mentioned like saving up money for Japan and everything like that and moving, and it's like, oh my God, like I mean, obviously we're not doing Kwanzaa this next time. We've already decided that, and um, yeah, I might just be very hashtag monkish for the next year to really save up and do what I need to do to um, have the experiences that I want to have. Because I think Japan for me will be, and even I thought about like, okay, so what if Shire Darian or both decide they don't want to or can't afford to go to Japan or for whatever reason they can't go to Japan? What will I do? Will I just not go? Will I still go? Will it be financially feasible for me to do that on my own? And I think in being here, I've started to see myself a little differently as far as like a person who will be traveling for a good portion of their career and will be experiencing a lot of these cultures and will be touching down in these spaces and trying to put that into a perspective of also being a solo traveler and realizing that, like, okay, even if they don't go, I think I still want to go to Japan because they're not they're obviously not my intimate friends, but they're at least my acquaintances that I'll be able to see there. Some connections that I could make, and getting a better mastery in my Duolingo bitch, getting a better mastery of Japanese could facilitate me being able to do that a little easier. Um, yeah, and so there's just like a lot of tensiony feelings. Like even Shy and I discussed, and obviously the point is moot now, but we discussed like, okay, do we just pay for Darian to come? So I was like, I'll use my miles, I'll buy Darian the plane ticket, and I'm like, okay, then I can handle the housing, we can do this, and blah blah blah. Even though I know we had talked about like the awkwardness of that there is an awkwardness of having your family pay for you to do something that you feel like you can't afford, and your chosen family, right? And and then of course you had like these great opportunities coming at you this summer. So I was like, shy, okay, maybe we'll just slow down on that. Darian is like handling, she's handling her business. She's trying to make that money. She's trying to get back into a right place. She's not going to have time to take a week off to go to Amsterdam to blah blah blah. Blah. So I think that kind of fell apart. And but there is like a lot that's there as far as like having the three of us in a space and having these experiences that are super valuable and getting to experience these kinds of things with you both and yeah, and yeah, so that I think at the end of the day, I kind of ask myself, like, is Shy worth X amount of dollars? Yes. Is my relationship with Shy worth that? Yeah. And it's not that it will go away or that relationship won't be there anymore if I don't spend that money. Like, that's not necessarily the case. But I think it's worth spending that money on if I have the money to spend. Obviously, if I didn't have the money to spend, yes, it would be nicer to keep all that money. But who knows what would happen to it? And I have been, and there are a lot of cases where I'm just not, because I have anxiety around dollars and bills and getting reimbursed for things and things like that. I tend to, like, I have like $1,000 in reimbursements that I should go and collect. And just send in receipts to get. But now I'm afraid it's been too long, and the fiscal year's coming, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm just not gonna get those money, and they're just not gonna give it to me. But they would, and blah blah blah. And I don't know. It's so like so much of grad school, especially, is like begging and emailing and trying to like. I spent a full ass month in January begging for a little bit of cash, that people had agreed to get me, and it was so hard. It was just so fucking hard living around that time, and then by the time they were like, okay, yeah, send it, I was out. I recovered. I got that paycheck. I was like back in equilibrium. One paycheck had changed the whole stress. So the only thing that had like really kept me going and begging and asking and debasing myself, annoying people to get paid uh, was the fact that I was not able to live. And then as soon as I got comfortable, it was like, oh, okay, well, now I don't have to debase myself and do all that or experience the anxiety associated with poverty. So I'm gonna avoid it because it reminds me of it, which is not a healthy way to have. It's not a healthy way to process money relations, and not a healthy way to go through it. And so much of it is tied up into like the awkwardness of asking people for money. And um, even though that money is like, it's not, I'm not asking them for their personal money. I'm asking them for institutional money that should be mine anyway. Uh, yeah, and breaking that mindset is hard. So there's that. I'll probably have to revisit all of these things again and again until I get better and until I can get a stable income. Because my income right now is not stable. As soon as I get back, I'm going to be down like $5,000 a year. My pay is going to decrease. My taxes will also be better though. I won't pay as much in taxes. There's like a weird like shift that happens right out $3,000, $30,000 a year, bitch. That like make your taxes go, and maybe it's also because I have to like hand pay all my fucking taxes now, instead of like to just take it out of my account and I submit it like W-2 or whatever at the end of the year. Yeah, ugh, ugh, it's the worst. So okay, so all that clear. Um, on to some more intense shit. So you talked about uh, how your week was really rough because Lacey passed, and cancer is. I mean, cancer's a bitch. We obviously have had this discussion, and it's also a kind of death that it's also a specific kind of grief. I think, and you can tell me if you feel this way, but it feels like because there is it's a more stretched out grief, but it's not shorter, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that like you never really stop grieving over these things. Um, but the period of intense grief, I feel like right around the death tends to be very wild. And not that I've experienced like really like really sudden death. It's one of those fallacies where I think you might assume that, oh, if only you had time to say goodbye, or if only you had time to like really discuss, blah blah blah. But especially if a person's taken before they're really, you really like before they've had what we assume to be a full life, right? Well, it just feels like you've been robbed of so much, so much time, so many experiences, so many chances to have your relationship with that person evolve and change and grow and flourish. Um, yeah, and grief and having to, and the extended grief that cancer can bring doesn't necessarily ease that. If anything, it just drags it along and makes it chronic instead of acute. Um, Not that you can't grieve for forever. I mean, not that you won't feel intense grief after a short death, right? Because I think they're similar in that way that they last, but I think maybe the bell curve or something is a little different. Anyways, I mean, measuring it is moot. It's not moot. You feel it anyway. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, Darian, and definitely if you have time during your whole weekend to cry, I definitely think you should. And don't be afraid to cry in front of people. Um, I don't think, in the grand scheme of things, that really matters, especially if they are your friends and they know what you've been through with Lacey. I mean, as far as her passing recently, like people will get it. Um, Crying on the beach does sound really cathartic, though. So if you can get that in, girl. Um, Ooh, free as the wind, girl. Free as the wind on this beach. Um, so then you talked about your uh, deep friendship with NPR nigga Quincy. Now, if anything ever happens, like if you two get married or something, I will definitely only call him NPR nigga. That is just, I'm letting you know right now. Like, I'll be like, Darian, the first time you told me about NPR nigga, I thought, blah, 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 in front of his whole family. I don't care. But that's really, it's, you know, and you talked about at some point FOMO associated with your experience at not getting to go to World Pride. Well, bitch, me too. But and that it would be, especially because they're right there, right? That's so rough. Um, it is, what am I trying to say? Oh, yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. I wanted to, I don't know why I brought up that in the first place. Okay. So what I wanted to say was, yes, in terms of FOMO, I have a lot of FOMO for your deepening relationships with people that I have very cursory knowledge of. Very one-sided knowledge of. I mean, there was a time where every person who, you know, was important in your life, I got to go and see. I got to go to Peter Pit with at one point or to do whatever. And so now it's like, and I'm sure eventually, especially if I get this Yale thing, I will definitely, meet these people. Maybe not Luis. Maybe that's for the best. uh, I'll be able to put uh, bodies to these emotions, if that makes sense. And yeah, I also am recognizing the difference of like I don't think I've met anybody who really had a deepening emotional relationship with. Maybe Levi is the closest to that, but Levi is very caught up in monogamy that I think it's one of those things that it's just like not. It's his first real, like he and Kevin. That is his first gay relationship, um, and so I think there's a lot of just like, oh, when you stick, you just stuck, and you don't really. There's not the emotional flexibility that happens with people who have been through a few relationships and who have recognized um, that there's more beyond their the you know heteronormative view of friendship and relationship and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so it has not deepened, and maybe that's also because he's white. I don't know. That could also be that. I just don't have a lot of black queers around me who aren't, um, you know, 7 to 10 years younger than me, and that could definitely be playing into my ability to have these wonderful Noah's Ark esque friendships that you're developing out, and I have a lot of FOMO. I wish I was there, but I'm happy to hear that they're happening, and I'm also excited. Maybe one day have similar things myself. Maybe, and then yes, and then you talked about a lot of hot men here, Darian, and then you talked about David. Um, I definitely got where you see where he's like, yeah, he's black, but also like he looks Desi. He looks like a little like Caribbean Desi. Although I think someone who posted like, yeah, there's some scientists on the minorities in science thing, Twitter, whatever that means, and about him being racially ambiguous, being black and Asian and then something else, and people just thinking he's Caribbean, but he's like, no, I'm from Africa. It's like, okay, girl, for real. Um, yeah, and so there's like so I see it. I see it, and he does look cute. I can see how like a specific photo can make him look popping. Like I see it. I see it. You discussed why men in their 30s. Other than soft body, did he have soft body? Other than soft body, yes, I think men in their 30s is really exciting, and also I don't know. I don't know the idea that older men feel a lot more comfortable in coming up to and expressing interest in us in general is not uncommon. And feeling more confident in being able to just say some shit, and maybe I'll get there one day. But other than like that guy at maybe I'm just in the wrong place. Other than that guy, the Men of Melanin Magic, who was just like, I'm gonna kiss you now, and I was like, oh fuck, bitch, all right, this might be sexual assault, but um, yeah, that is not my experience generally, and it's probably why it's actually really easy for me to be single because I don't want to put in all that work. Although I often have to. Ugh. Okay, this is why. Okay. Yes. And you said he was definitely husband material, except he already has a man girl. How's that husband material? You see, you watch too much of those sister wives, because you and so you kind of like expressed that you had this wonderful date, this perfect, wonderful impromptu date that resulted in like an amazing kiss and bitch you best friend. It was a great date. Um, and he's very attractive. Uh, but then he was a shitty texter after. He did not do the follow up. He did not want to. I think from what you described, I was not expecting. Like when you said he had a long distance thing going on, that where the man has been for a very long time. I think uh, that there might be a situation in which he was a shitty texter because he's trying to ghost you, girl. He's just ghosting you, and because he recognized that there was something potentially emotional in what happened between you two. It was not the standard let's hook up and fuck and then move the fuck on. And if he is the kind of person who feels like that is cheating, whereas just being sexual with other people is not, then that might be why he's distancing himself um, from you, and especially I think in terms of like uh, trying to confide in him about your recent emotional state. Like those are like friendship things, I think, that are really good. It's not necessarily nigga that I had one good date with, kind of thing. And I say that having gone through a situation where a nigga really wanted to. It does not sound like you necessarily did this, but having said a situation where the guy tried to just unload his, all of his trauma onto me, and I was like, okay, like I totally hear you, and that's I want to be a good person, but also that's a lot for me to deal with on my own. So I definitely think you, you probably just gotta let that go. Sounds like you got a lot of hot men walking around, and he does not seem like he's emotionally available or actually available. And a non-response is an answer. A non-response is an answer. A non-response is an answer. She's answering you. You know she's seen it. You know she recognized. She just doesn't want to get explore. She just doesn't want to explore. So, and that's not to say that that poisons the date that you had or makes it um, not valuable. You can still derive a lot of value from that experience, and take pleasure in the memory of that. That was a good fucking date. That was a great fucking kiss. And yeah, if he messages you, sure, you'll try it again because that was really nice. But and it's easier said than done. Easier said than done. But definitely, there's something to be said about not not putting too much of your emotional energy onto whether or not this guy is going to message you back or not, or whatever, or whether or not he's going to, um, you know, you're going to develop some deep, rich, rewarding friendship, with him, where you like have fun sex and get to talk about amazing things, and then eventually you just want him to leave his man because you're both perfect with each other anyway. Um, so yeah, I think there is there's probably also I was surprised that you said you didn't want to talk to your therapist about this, or about your tendency to uh, hook up with married men, married involved men. Why not? I feel like that's a space to explore, especially since it is a pattern. It's not necessarily a bad pattern. I don't think, especially given the nature of homosexual relations. I think what you're looking for, though, is harder to get in from people who are getting that from elsewhere, right? And I think your experience um, with this guy illustrates that. I also think your experience with what Quincy and what he's looking for and what he's not looking for, um, very talks to uh, your decisions about what you want and what you're trying to get. And I think maybe, and this is not a read. I'm not trying to read you or anything. Just exploring the space. Maybe it could be something along the lines of what you want um, can be, or maybe even the mental state that a person who is wanting the kind of things that you're wanting means that they're probably already in a relationship, right? Or they're probably already trying to get those things from somebody. And um, if you have been living in um, if you'd been living in Boston for, you know, 2 years, 3 years, you'd already be in a relationship, right? Open or not or whatever, you would found somebody. And I definitely believe that within 3 years, bitch, there's gonna be somebody. Um, hell or high water. So, uh, yeah, and so give it time, let it flow out. It's not the end of the world that David as fine as he is, you know, isn't emotionally available because that's just how it goes. People aren't always emotionally available, especially if they're fucking attractive. Especially if they're fucking attractive. Um, and right, and then you go on to talk about like okay, the men of color weekend. See, that just sounds so nice. Like, oh, there's a weekend for that? Oh, wow. I just am living in a rock. Uh, um, free spirit tea. Um, yes, and you should definitely, embrace free spirit tea. Um, but one that can swerve. So you mentioned having to swerve a few hoes who are on their they have Drake fever, they have very light skin, light skin desires. See, that's very interesting. So I think my, and you had like I think a parallel experience where you had a brother who is darker skin, and then you've always been compared to him in very odd, problematic, stereotypical ways. Like, oh, I wish your blah 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 was more like you, or blah blah blah. And you see, like, you get valued in a different way from your sibling who is, ostensibly just darker skinned than you, for whatever behavior differences they might have. So we have a lot of experience, like, thinking through these things. I don't think I get light skinned fever for dating reasons. That's not me. I'm just a little too on the melanated side, But definitely, I mean, I think that is interesting to explore. And that, yes, is it result of colorism? Yes. Does that like a turn off for you if you feel like a person is interested in you because you're light skinned, um, or that light skinnedness plays into their attraction to you? Is that a turn off, or if you were attracted to them anyway, you'd be like, okay, whatever. What works works. You're here. You're here. At least you're not saying you're as dark as I would go. Uh, yeah, you talked about some of the discussions Men of Melon and Magic uh, had about that, and discussions that occurred around those conversations. So I would, you said you don't want to get into it, but like, I mean, is it dynamic or is it just same old shit? I feel like having because most of our friends, like in college at least, right, were were like our group of uh, like QPOC girls who, you know, were islandized in whiteness, right? That was PSU. Or, if you want to center our friendships like that, obviously we were more dynamic. But, at a primarily white institution, you had primarily white relationships or friendships or whatever, um, opportunities. And you had to find your uh, QPOC ones. And we brought up the idea of like, oh, if we were in BSU, that might have been a different dynamic completely, and how that may have affected things. So it feels like maybe some of these things are more acute now that you are in a space that is primarily made up of men of color, um, and you're a part of this also swimming dating pool. So I'm very interested in this weekend. I hope you thought it up and don't think too hard about the macro. Don't think too hard about the macro. It's definitely there and worth discussion, but don't think too hard about the macro. Definitely just feel what you're feeling and get the dick you want to get. Okay, and then you talked about having a lot of weight loss. This is very like Ricky Carter tea of just moving to a new place and being poor and not having. I mean, definitely your diet. You're making good diet choices, but I've definitely been feeling. I don't know. So like when you talked about people like basically complimenting you on your loss of weight and that having mixed like feeling good and not even questioning why that feels good because there's inherent body shaming associated with that. Like my mother, who had been known to like cause me stress in body shaming me when my body was not, what she saw as ideal, has been commenting about, oh, how skinny you, oh, you look like you lost weight. And my stepfather too, who I called for Father's Day, was also like, yeah, no, you look like you lost so much weight. You're just eating much better over there. And I'm like, I actually haven't weighed myself at all. Who knows? I doubt it though. I doubt. I don't feel like I've lost weight. Like I don't feel like my body has changed very much. I've been eating more salads, I guess. But I don't feel a whole lot different. And then they also comment. My mother commented last time I called about like my skin because we're on video call. She's like, "Oh, your skin is so much clearer. You're just eating so much better." Little did you know, I had some foundation on, girl. Like, now I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna have to have foundation on when I go back. She's gonna be like, oh, your skin looks like, what happened? Blah blah blah, and then she's gonna clock me. Although it's not, since it's like a lotion. I don't know. It blend. Maybe I just blend, and these girls, white girls on here aren't blending because um, it's really hard to clock. My It's hard to clock. I really think these girls aren't blending out here, and then that's the issue because you can definitely see like, oh yeah, I have makeup on, or it doesn't really look like it. I think it just takes out like there's a glow, like a warmth to my skin that it dulls, and that's like, but it also evens out some of the things. So maybe my mother would probably be able to tell that when she's up close. She'd be like, "Oh, yeah," especially if I take a shower, girl, because that it'll get everywhere. I'm still trying to work out how to like probably work in like this into my routine because you mentioned my skin looking better. My mother mentioned my skin. I'm like, oh great, I know I'm just gonna have to do that. Not that I'm like blaming anybody because my skin looking better is ideal and especially for photo opportunities. I like looking snatched. But it is definitely easily working itself into my daily routine. It also made me think about like women who hate makeup because they feel like it is pushed on them versus people who have gotten to explore makeup and make decisions into putting makeup and it being a part of how they view themselves and how they improve themselves and like the dynamics around that is very interesting. Um, yeah. So congrats on your body changing and getting to fit into new clothing. One of the things that I really loved about traveling, and I'm trying to incorporate, like, is picking up clothes at thrift stores when I'm there in different places. And I spent like a whole like hour shopping at this thrift store in Brussels, and then they only took cash, and I had no euros on me. And then the ATM down the street didn't work, and I was just like, ugh. It was like the worst feeling because I found so many cool things, and I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. Oh, I'm gonna get this for Shy. I'm gonna get this for Darren. Oh, I'm gonna get this, and it was like It's I absolutely love it. But so yes, I'm going to be more prepared next time, and definitely going to explore thrift shopping more because I've gotten some really great pieces. And when I go to these big cities, it's like a wonderful thing to do, just kind of explore the coast, and it's a way to like souvenir and take things with me while still like feeling like I'm doing like a local expression. So now I like get my staples, like my oh I need pants that just fit, and I need oh undershirts or I need XYZ thing, and I'll get those from Cinder's store. But then anything like everything else, all my extra pieces, I'll get from a thrift store. So I'm super excited about doing more of that because it's also cheap. Oh my gosh, also super cheap and so nice. Okay, and I brought that up because you mentioned you were losing weight, and so you're happy to be able to do more better thrifting. Yes, girl, yes. Like one of the things I realized being here is that thrifting um, is that because so many Dutch people are tall and big, I have had no issue finding things at their stores in my size. Like, I got these pair of shoes. Bitch, you know how hard it is to find like good, like these are fucking Adidas, girl, like at this thrift store. And I was like, work. And like, it wasn't just like one pair in my size, girl. They were all in my size. It's like, it was like I had like, oh, this is like a full ass range here. Thank you, Dutch people, for having big ass feet and being tall because that is exactly what I need. I'm super happy about that. Okay, and then it's like over an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm so happy that you can see your way. You can see clearly now. The rain is gone, and you will be able to exit out of some of this financial stress very soon. I'm very happy to hear that. I feel like I have more of a turbulent financial future headed. I think I hope I'm going to be a lot better. No, I am. I am going to be a lot better about my money and my money opportunities coming up, and really because as soon as I graduate, I have to start paying off more intensely my student loans, like because I had one of them on because you can like delay them while you're in grad school or whatever. And so I've had like been making small payments in there, but now I'm trying to make more payments at the same time, like save up money for this move and save up money for these things. So it's a lot, and so I feel you. And now that you know the cycle, especially because like for me, grad school pay would happen like when I was brokest was when they weren't paying me, right? And so there's like a predictive cycle, and once I started figuring out that predictive cycle, things got easier. Not great, but things got easier. So if you can figure out kind of cycles of how you need to pay things and things like that, definitely, definitely make that work. And you mentioned moving into Boston in the next year. Are you like looking into roommates? Are you like considering some of the people that you know from Menabella and Magic, or just that you know from the city and things like that, and whatnot? Definitely, because that's where the real deals are. That's where the real deals are. Yeah, and you mentioned your car stuff. Would you want to sell your car? Because it sounds like you're not using it. Really, it's one of those things. And I've talked to you about contemplating selling my vehicle. And other than like not knowing how I get to work every day, like that extra little boost of cash would be really nice, and might be something that really helps you. It not be a drain that you have to pay for parking and pay for all this stuff and do all these things. Where like if you live in the city and you can handle um, public transportation and you can do a bit of like those cheap buses between here in New York or there and there, or you're in the airport. Like if you can do all those things um, and not need your vehicle, like definitely. Like I wish the U.S. was more like it has been in Europe because I would definitely not need a car. There'd be no reason for me to get a car. I have my little bike, my little rusted ass little bike, and participate in public transit because there's really no need here. And so if you can avoid that, definitely do that. Like the only reason we're getting two new grad students now, and so I'm contemplating giving up my cars because that means they have cars. They can drive people out to Research Park when they need to go to Research Park, or I can like try and Vogue and just like do my bike thing. But since I'm moving in a year, I'm gonna need I'm high key going to need um, my car just to like get my stuff and my cat across the fucking country. Um, even then, no, I have to. I'm still flexing the idea. So think about it. Like I know it's like one of those things that like, oh no, I finally have a car, and I don't have to try and sell it, or I have to do blah blah blah, and then I have to buy another car again if I needed one in the future. But I think it can be if it's not doing you good, if it's only giving you stress, you know, cut off the infected limb, girl, and cash it out. Okay. Um, if you feel that's what you should do. And if it would give you some fucking breathing room financially. Good God. Okay. Yes. And then I'm really happy that I have you as well, Darian. It's really nice being like someone that I can really speak to for like the fullness of my existence, if that makes sense. Where like a lot of my friendships and my relationships with my family, they aren't as deep as I would like them to be because of um, like the things I'm going through, the things that are most tumultuous for me emotionally, they just can't empathize with, and um, it's not, it's just out of their realm of being able to I don't know. I don't want to limit people, but and maybe that's part of it too, is that I feel like I can't bring things to them, and even if I could bring things to them, but every time I've tried, it usually winds up being like, "Oh, I'm sure you'll be fine." Oh, you'll be okay, or oh, you know, it's okay. Oh no, your life is like blah blah blah. And so I never really get to tell them about my actual life and the actual struggles that I'm going through and the actual bullshit. But I feel like at this point, you're like uh, definitely one of my oldest friends, and one of the people who you know, I'm closest to because of um, my ability to share my innards with you, all of them. Yeah. Okay. So, super love you, and I hope you have a really fun time at this trip in Providence. I hope you have a better week. Um, just more consistently able to recognize and take time for your emotions to breathe, because for a lot of reasons, it's not going to evaporate in the next day. And also, don't feel bad about having fun or being happy. Um, yeah, because that can creep up too, and it's unnecessary because um, life should be about celebrating life and should be about remembering people and caring for them when you can, and caring for their memories when you can do that. Okay. All right. I love you. Mwah.